Hi, I'm Skip Nipper. Welcome to Skip's Corner, the podcast where I tell you about not only Nashville's great baseball history and traditions,
shot to right, a one-hop liner,
but certainly about its past. And you will hear a little bit about its present and future, too.
Yes, he can. It makes the waist-high catch.
There are great stories about Tom Wilson Park, Herschel Greer Stadium, Sulphur Dell, and the players, coaches, and fans who love everything about baseball. And every once in a while, you will get to hear from a special guest who will share their fondness and even passion for the great game.
It's a high fly ball down the right field corner, going way back, hits a lead-off home run.
Chuck Dressen had several years as the manager in and out of the Nashville Vols in the early 1930s and then again in 1938. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about him because his career was pretty doggone good. Charles Walter Dressen was born on September the 20th, 1894 in Decatur, Illinois. Later, as he played sports, he ended up working as a switchman for the Wabash Railroad, and at 5'5" and less than 150 pounds, was fast and played for various football and baseball teams. And he loved to get paid to play, sometimes for $7.50 a game. He didn't have a great arm, but baseball scouts thought his hitting and fielding were pretty good. He signed a pro contract to play baseball for the 1919 Moline, Illinois Plowboys of the Class B 3I League, and the next season with Peoria of the same league in 1920. He returned to Peoria in 1921, then moved up to the St. Paul Saints of the American Association late in the year, where he played through 1924. The Cincinnati Reds purchased his contract, and he made his big league debut as a pinch hitter on April the 17th, 1925, and he had his first hit 9 days later on the 26th. He had his best major league season 2 years later in 1927 when he batted .292, but in 1930 he lost his starting job to young Tony Cuccinello. He split most of the 1931 season between the minor league Baltimore Orioles and Minneapolis Millers, and he knew he was nearing the end of the line. However, unlike most ball players, he was prepared. Because when he learned in June that Nashville was in need of a new manager, he did what not many would do, I don't think. He borrowed money from a friend, hopped on a train, and met Vols owner Fay Murray in Nashville. And he made Murray an offer that he couldn't refuse. And what was it? With 77 games left on the schedule, if Dressen failed to win more than half of the remaining contests, Murray wouldn't owe him a dime. Now, how about that? Well, on July the 7th, 1932, Joe Klugman was released as manager of the Vols, and Dressen was appointed as his replacement. Now, how do you think he did? Did he earn his pay? Well, it was close. On the final day of the season, Nashville's record under Dressen stood at 38-38. And playing the Atlanta Crackers in Atlanta, the Vols fell behind in the early innings, but they rallied to win. And so, with a record of 39-38, one game more than he needed, Dressen got paid. And Fay Murray also gave him a one-year contract to manage the club in 1933. And he was going to let Dressen play third base to boot. I believe one of the things Murray and business manager Jimmy Hamilton of the Vols liked about Dressen, and I also think the players did too, was as manager of the Vols, he had a reputation for an encyclopedic knowledge of inclinations and statistics in evaluating players. And in early September of 1933, Dressen left the Vols to play third base for the New York Giants because the Nashville club season was over and they had a working agreement with the Giants, you see. And he played in 16 games for the pennant-winning Giants and batted .222. Now, over the winter, Dressen contracted typhoid fever, and he entered a hospital on December the 26th. But by February the 24th of 1934, he announced that he would leave the hospital and should be in good shape to resume his position with the team when the club started spring training on March the 15th, but not before the New York Giants, who still had an option on him, released him to Nashville on March the 7th. Now, a Nashville baseball history highlight occurred on April the 7th of 1934 when Dressen's Vols won against the New York Yankees 5-4 in an exhibition game at Sulphur Dell before a crowd of 3,000. Now, that was the game when James P. Dawson, New York Times reporter who was traveling with the Yankees, described Sulphur Dell's unique feature when he wrote, quote, "The right field here is cut out of a hill and is terraced, making it necessary for a fly chaser to combine hill climbing with speed and accuracy in fielding the ball." Dawson wrote that Babe Ruth, I'm quoting again, almost broke one of his legs catching Rada's fly on the climb in the first. The Babe slipped and stumbled, but climbed on and came up with the ball. And by the way, Ruth was 2 for 4, as was Lou Gehrig. Now, in July, the Cincinnati Reds dealt their player-manager, Bob O'Farrell, to the Cubs. The team was 29 games under 500, too, and I'd have let him go as well. And Dressen was offered the job. So he quit his post with the Vols, and on July the 28th, Dressen was announced as new Cincinnati Reds manager to take over on July the 30th. But it came at a price. Fay Murray was no dummy. Murray sold Dressen to Cincinnati for $15,000 to become the Reds manager. And Lance Richburg, Nashville outfielder, was named to take Dressen's place as the Nashville manager. Well, how did Dressen do with the Reds? They finished in last place in 1934, 6th place in 1935, and had a 5th place finish in 1936. But in 1937, the Reds were in the cellar again. And when Dressen demanded to know his status for 1938, he was let go with a month left in the season. Now, on October the 9th, 1937, Dressen was named Nashville Vols manager once again, signing a 1-year contract for $10,000, which was a Southern Association record salary for managing in the league at that time. So Dressen returned to Nashville once again because I believe Murray and Hamilton knew he was familiar with players and how they played, and had been somewhat successful, and they took him back. And he was an integral part of the administration, too, as on December the 5th of 1937, he'd only been on the job a couple of months, at the minor league meetings in Chicago, Nashville Vols business manager Jimmy Hamilton and field manager Dressen signed a working agreement with the Brooklyn Dodgers. And as a Dodgers affiliate in 1938, Dressen guided the team to a second-place finish. Now, Larry McPhail, who at one time ran a department store in Nashville, was a lawyer before he got into baseball. His son, Lee McPhail, who became a president of the American League, was born in Nashville. He's one of 3 players from Tennessee to be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. That's Turkey Stearns, born in Nashville. Lee McPhail, born in Nashville also. And then just recently, Todd Helton from Knoxville, Tennessee, was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Well, McPhail, who had been the Reds general manager and now was in a similar role with Brooklyn, added Dressen to Leo DeRocher's staff as a third base coach for 1939. And so Dressen's tenure in Nashville was over. But it paved the way for a significant event to happen, because to replace Dressen on November the 8th, 1938, Fay Murray announced that Larry Gilbert, veteran manager of the New Orleans Pelicans, was the Nashville Vols manager succeeding Dressen. And Murray said that Gilbert, who'd been the pilot of the Pelicans since 1923, would become a part owner of the club. Well, that signing, I believe, was the greatest coup in the history of the Southern Association, and maybe in all of minor league baseball. Nashville would enjoy several pennants and Dixie Series championships under Gilbert's tutelage during the 1940s. And that was the end of Dressen's run with Nashville. But as a side note, for several years, with Leo DeRocher calling the shots for the Dodgers, there was rarely without input from Dressen. And in 1947, when Larry McPhail bought stock in the Yankees, he lured Dressen to the new manager, Bucky Harris's staff. And Dressen served as third base coach and doubled as pitching coach, and the Yankees won the pennant and World Series in 1947, although they failed in 1948, finishing behind the Indians and the Red Sox. And Dressen's protector, Larry McPhail, sold his share in the team to George Weiss, who never really considered Dressen as Yankee material. And manager Bucky Harris was shown the door too, and the new hire to replace him was Casey Stengel. And so Dressen grabbed the managing job that Stengel left with the Oakland Oaks of the Pacific Coast League, and Dressen guided the Oaks to a second-place finish in 1949 and a PCL pennant in 1950. Well, that winter, the call came from Brooklyn again. I'm kind of going on past his Nashville Vols career because it's an important part of history that Dressen plays. This time, the Dodgers wanted Dressen to be their manager, and he inherited one of the most talented rosters in National League history, one that included Gil Hodges, Jackie Robinson, Pee Wee Reese, Carl Furillo, Duke Snyder, Roy Campanella, Don Newcomb, Preacher Rowe, and Carl Erskine, among others. Now, I'll close out by saying that while Dressen did much of his managing from the third base coaching box with the 1951 Dodgers, you probably remember the Giants came roaring back from way behind the Dodgers, and under pressure, the Dodgers dropped 6 of their last 10 to finish the regular season in a first-place tie. And a best-of-3 playoff ensued with a coin flip to determine who would get the rubber game if necessary. The Dodgers won, and Dressen opted to play the opener in Ebbets Field, giving the Giants the next 2 at the Polo Grounds. And in the third game, with 3 outs to go and the series tied 1 game apiece, the Dodgers were up 4-1, and the Giants scored a run against Newcomb and had 2 men on when Dressen called Coach Clyde Sukeforth in the bullpen. And Branca and Erskine were warming up, and Sukeforth reported that Erskine had just bounced a curve. And despite the fact that the batter, Bobby Thompson, had homered off Branca in Game 1, Dressen chose him to close out the Giants. The rest is history. The shot heard round the world. And our Joe Casey, the former police chief of Nashville, was at that game and told me once that home run that Thompson hit just landed a few rows in front of him. They were seated in left field. Now, Dressen could have walked Thompson too, but with Willie Mays on the on-deck circle, would that have made a difference? Now, during spring training in 1965, Dressen suffered a heart attack. And in 1966, a month into the season, he had a second heart attack. And while recuperating, he got a kidney infection and subsequently had a third, this time fatal, heart attack, and he died on August the 10th, 1966. Now, his impressive overall record as a major league manager with 5 teams was 1,008 wins and 973 losses. He managed 2 pennant winners, played for a world champion with the 1933 Giants, and coached on World Series winners in 1947 with the Yankees and in 1959 with the LA Dodgers. And as a player, Charlie was active in 7 big league seasons, was a regular for 4 years, and had a career batting mark of .272. Now, although he was a nonstop talker and really a supreme egotist, he was the flesh and blood epitome of a baseball lifer. He was single-minded, he was resilient, and he was always trying to think 3 steps ahead. Now, here's a bit of trivia of Dressen before I end it. After the 1920 baseball season concluded in Peoria, Dressen returned to Decatur, where George Halas, does that name ring a bell, recruited him to play for the A.E. Staley Food Starch Company football team. And he appeared in 4 league games in 1920 for the Staleys. And do you recognize that name, Staleys? They were the precursor to the Chicago Bears. And here's another little tidbit. Dressen's birth date is often mistakenly given as September the 28th, 1898. That's my birth date. No, I wasn't born in 1898, but September the 28th. And throughout his baseball career, he was actually 4 years older than he claimed to be, actually born on September the 20th, 1894. And Dressen's father, Philip, had immigrated from Germany in 1882. His mother, the former Kate Driscoll, had immigrated from England in 1880, and the family spelled the name with one S, Dresen, which is how Chuck Dressen signed his World War I draft card. And in 1947, when he was a coach with the Yankees and they clinched the AL pennant, Charlie Dressen became the answer to a baseball trivia question. Who is the only man in uniform for the city's three baseball teams, the New York Yankees, Dodgers, and Giants, when they clinched a pennant? It was Charlie Dressen. And whether known as Chuck, Charlie with an IE, or Charlie with an EY Dressen, he stuck by his players and he taught them to win. He studied them and he played situational baseball. In Nashville, he went over 200 games in parts of 4 seasons and led the Vols to a 4th, 3rd, and 2 second-place finishes. With future major leaguers on his teams like Slick Castleman, Johnny Gooch, Byron Speece, Lonnie Fry, Lance Richburg, Poco Tate, Phil Weintraub, Footsy Grantham, Ace Adams, Bert Haas, and Moose Clayball, along with eternal Nashville stalwart infielder through the 30s Bill Rada in his stables. He became a well-loved, no-nonsense Nashville manager. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this segment of Nashville baseball history. My podcast is a labor of love. I enjoy the study. I enjoy the research. I enjoy the writing. It's always good to have people listen. I'm grateful that you are listening. I hope you'll come again soon. Thank you